Hey guys, welcome back. Modii here, and we are back with Mondays with Modii. I forgot what my own series was called. God, I'm dumb. Anyways, welcome back. I want to give a big thank you to all you guys after the first episode. If you guys remember, I said I was a little bit nervous doing it, but the response was really cool, and I really liked it. So here we are again. Let's keep doing this stuff. So sticking with our theme of kind of my video game life, a lot to do with me where I worked and what I did. The first episode, I pretty much just talked about me growing up as a kid and different systems I had and some of the things I remember, some of the nostalgia. But with this episode, we're going to actually talk about my first video game job. I want to say this was in 2000, which would have made me about 23. So I was a much younger Modii. Weirdly enough, grayer. Anyways, just kidding. I had two very little children. Pink Cacti and Trin were very much little baby toddlers, little adorable, little squishy things. Anyways, sorry. And I got what I believe to be one of my first jobs in retail. Up to this point, I had worked, and we'll talk about this in much later episodes of the series, but I worked mostly food service, restaurants, fast food, a lot of telemarketing, teleresearch, that kind of stuff. But this was my first kind of retail job, and I was super excited because I got a job at Circuit City. Circuit City is number one on the casualty list of companies that I brought down with the power of my presence. But yeah, so for those of you guys that don't know what Circuit City is, they closed. I don't even exactly know when they closed. It probably would have been 2005 to 2010, somewhere in that window, I think. But for any of you guys that don't know, Circuit City, in essence, was, imagine if your grandparents opened a Best Buy. That's the best example. It was a electronics store like Best Buy. It was actually a competitor of Best Buy that was pretty strong in I believe, the late 80s and definitely through the 90s. They carried, TVs and home audio, car audio, computers, and video games, obviously. And I think at one point they used to carry appliances. They didn't carry appliances when I started working there, but that was one thing. But they were basically just, the company that was chasing Best Buy all the time. And they probably were more, bigger than Best Buy at a point. Definitely not now, because they don't exist. But yeah, I got the job there, and I'm super excited because I worked in a department that was called ACE. And it was kind of a hodgepodge department. So it was actually kind of two departments. It was all the CDs and movies, and then, which was just called music. I think they called that department just music. And then there was Ace, which had all the video game stuff. At the time when I started there, I got hired right after the PlayStation 2 had come out. PlayStation 2, I believe, would come out in 2000, and I got hired in between the PlayStation 2 coming out and Christmas. So it was this, I want to say, late November. I don't know if I was there for Black Friday, so probably would have been beginning December. I got hired there. Now, the great part was, I was excited. I loved video games. I loved video game stuff. I loved talking about video games. Loved it. It was so cool. But the problem with it is that the department I worked in, not only did we sell video games and systems and stuff like that, but we also sold all the rest of the stuff that didn't really fit in the other departments. So we had cordless home phones. We had computer accessories like hard drives and RAM and stuff like that. Boom boxes, like portable stereos, musical keyboards like piano keyboards, headphones, just whatever. and it was all one department, so you couldn't really just stick in the video game area. You kind of had to sell everything. And I'll be honest, I kind of hated the other stuff. Selling home phones to old people and trying to explain what a gigahertz is was mind-numbing. Anyways, right. But yeah, so we sold video games. Now, to give you guys an idea of the time frame, like I said, the PS2 had come out. So the systems out at the time that we sold, not only games and hardware and accessories for, was the PlayStation 2. We still had PlayStation 1 stuff, because like I said, the PlayStation 2 had just come out. The Nintendo 64, so there was actually boxed Nintendo 64s, and this is when they came out with all of the crazy color ones and all the transparent plastic ones, and I remember there being a Pikachu one they came out with. So there was like 20 different Nintendo 64s. It was ridiculous. And then another big one at the time was a Dreamcast. You got to keep in mind, at this point, the Dreamcast had been out for slightly over a year. So at this point, Sega was still part of the mix. Sonic was not on a Nintendo game, which, by the way, blasphemy. Blasphemy. I don't care. You put Sonic on a Nintendo system? No, Sonic goes down with the ship. He does. Anyways. I digress. But yeah, so we sold that stuff, and I loved it because, and you're going to hear a lot more of this as the series continued, but I loved talking about video games, which sounds kind of dumb and redundant because everybody loves talking about it, but I loved it. I loved hearing other people's opinions, getting pointed towards games maybe I had never tried, but I loved talking about video game stuff to the point where I used to kind of get in trouble because, somebody would come in, and this would be generally someone who is around my age, late teens to, mid-late 20s, and we would just talk about, I wasn't even selling anything. I was getting paid. Yet I wasn't even selling anything. We were just talking about I remember this time in Blast Corps on the 64. This was, whatever. I guess at this time it wasn't that far back on Blast Corps, but it's a great game, by the way. Uniracers is amazing. That kind of crap. And I used to literally get pulled aside by all kinds of managers. Not even managers of my department. There may have been managers from other stores, like other companies. I think a Radio Shack guy yelled at me one time, but literally I just loved talking about stuff with people. I loved talking just information. And it wasn't I was trying to know more than them. I wasn't trying to be smarter or anything like that. It was literally just a case of I just loved it. So I would try and stay around the video game area as much as I could. But of course I had to go sell the other stuff. Now, one thing, and this will lead into more future videos, I'm kind of laying a little bit of a groundwork here, is that the one thing I really dislike, once again, being 23, and just wanting to talk about video games all day, is I hated working in the big box store because there were so many bosses, managers above you inside the same place. So you had a store manager, and then you had department managers. So you had, a manager for computers, a manager for TVs, a manager for home audio, car audio, my weird little Ace music department, the customer service had their own manager, everything. Now, even though, my department manager was obviously my direct boss, you also had any of the other managers could come up and say, I want you to do this, or I need you to do this, or stop doing that, or start doing this, or whatever else. So literally everywhere you turn, you had just somebody standing behind you. It was a sales job. Shout out Burger King, not sponsored. It was a sales job, but I guess they kind of pushed numbers, but they really wanted to sell warranties and things like that. And it was always, I could do it, and I did it really well, like almost to a fault. I can remember selling, oh God, I feel so guilty about this, but I would do it not necessarily for the job, just to see if I could pull it off. And then when I would pull it off, I would feel bad. There's been times that I have sold a $15 warranty on a $10 phone. At the time, the cheapest warranty they had on anything in the store was $15. Literally anything that had a serial number, took a battery, anything that could malfunction would get a warranty. So if you bought, say, a $100 thing and you got a $15 warranty, okay, 15%. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. I think $15 went up to like $200. But yeah, people would come in and buy like corded $10 home phones. And it was mostly old people, honestly, that I would, I felt bad, but they're grown adults. They can make their own decisions. Anyways, but yeah, I kind of hated all the other stuff. And of course, there was a lot of organizing and, cleaning things up and dealing with stuff. But it's when I learned that I really liked helping unknowledgeable people with video games. When you get like a gamer in there, somebody that was like me, that just studied video games 24/7, a lot of time it started to end up becoming kind of a pissing contest where you were, oh, well, yeah, so-and-so made this game, but, this, that, and it was always just like, it almost became like a weird debate to where you would like, ironically, take the opposite stance of the other person just for the debate. So that kind of got a little taxing. But when people would come in and, parents, grandparents, anybody like that would come in and ask about video games and they didn't know, they were very receptive and they were very appreciative. And I always liked that. And I always liked helping them out. Now, one thing for a lot of people out there, especially the younger audience, won't get is there was a time that video games were considered a toy. Okay? They weren't this, multimedia, cross the board extravaganza. You didn't generally have adults playing video games. You generally didn't have people in their 30s or 40s. Now, don't get me wrong, there were plenty of people who did. But compared to today, you would have parents that would come in that weren't relatively that old. They probably grew up playing Nintendo and Sega and stuff like that, but grew up and got out of that thing, and because the really what happened was when the PlayStation 2 came out, at the time DVD players were hundreds of dollars. Crappy DVD players were hundreds of dollars. I mean, you can go to Walmart now and buy one for like, what, $30 or something like that? You can probably buy a Blu-ray player for $30. But yeah, DVD players were like $200, $300, $400, $500 at the time. And the movies were like $50, $60. It was ridiculous. But, and then the PlayStation 2 came out. Now, I'm not a big Sony fan, and there'll be a conversation about that later. But, I had them. I played PlayStation 2. It wasn't a bad system. But the PlayStation 2 was a very defining system because it had a DVD player in it. So you could get that video game system the kids have been bugging about, and you could get the DVD player that you've been wanting, or say the wife or husband's been wanting, or whatever else, for the living room. So the PlayStation 2 was really one of the first systems that kind of became like a whole family entertainment system. Even if you weren't into video games, you could still watch DVDs, which was huge. That is one thing that Sony did that really opened things up. It's something we kind of take for granted now because, with streaming and with that Blu-ray and everything plays everything, and there's a million ways to watch everything. But it was new at the time. And then I know a year later, when I went to my first Black Friday, and in this time I had become, and I know I'm all over the place, guys. This is just how I tell stories, so sorry. About a year later, I had gotten a new position at Circuit City, and it was called Video Game Lead. And basically what it was something that was primarily used during the holidays, pretty much from probably October to like February. where they wanted somebody who knew a lot about video games pretty much in the video game department all the time. Even though it was still part of where all the phones and the boom boxes and the hard drives and stuff were, they wanted them just in the video game part. And I got the job. There was no pay raise. It was an arbitrary title, but it just meant when I got scheduled, I was in video games. Whoever else got scheduled had to deal with the rest of the crap. And it was pretty great. It was awesome. It was so much what I wanted. I wanted to just talk and sell video games. And around this time, this is a year after the PS2, the GameCube and Xbox came out. If I remember correctly, they came out about 4 days apart. And for a lot of you guys that may not remember this or may not have been alive, the Xbox coming out was a kind of a joke to a lot of people, because everybody was like, oh, well, Microsoft knows how to make software. What do they know about video games? Which is hilarious to think about today. But, you already had Nintendo. You had Sega. Sony was well established. Nobody thought the Dreamcast was going to go away. I mean, the sales weren't great, but nobody thought the Dreamcast was going to go away, which it ironically did shortly after this. And then all of a sudden, Microsoft's coming out with the Xbox and what was it originally called? Project Dolphin? No, that was a GameCube or 64. I don't remember what the project name was, but I think one of the most amazing things is we had some sort of sales contest company-wide, and basically it was whichever stores, it was like the top 5 stores or 10 stores or something like that in the entire company, the entire nation, that sold the most video game, whatever. I don't remember what the contest was. They had 2 of them, one for Xbox, one for GameCube. I think it might have been pre-orders. I don't remember what it was. But they could win an Xbox or a GameCube. So I really pushed. I really because at this point I've been there for a year, I really talked up the other people I worked with and, really had them push. And I ended up winning both. I ended up winning a GameCube and an Xbox. I think I got them right around the time they came out, maybe, a couple weeks later, because they had to, send a special one. So, yeah, I got a purple GameCube and an original Xbox. And I got them on the same day, so that was a crazy day. And I had the PS2 at the time. And, so, yeah, that was really amazing. That was my first kind of sense of I wanted to make selling video games a career. I didn't want it just to be, at this point I think I was full-time. My manager was really lazy and hated, what's up with that? My manager hated making schedules and stuff, so he let me do it, which was amazing because I wrote my own schedule and everyone else's. I had weekends off. I only worked weekdays. I was home by 5. It was awesome. Nobody cared. And I really got interested in a couple of the managers kind of showing me management stuff. It's the first place I ever saw a P&L report, which is a profit loss report. Probably reports I shouldn't have seen as just some floor employee, but yeah, I really got interested in making schedules. I really didn't. I mean, I think I sat in on an interview or 2, but it was just, I kind of just bullied my way in there and just sat in the corner. So, the person getting interviewed probably thought I was next up, and they thought it was weird that I was in the room. But yeah, I really got interested in the management thing, and yeah, like I said, I mean, at the time there was a lot of just long days because I worked weekdays and stuff like that. It was a lot of time it would be slow, but man, yeah, it was very pure back then. I wasn't nearly as jaded as I am now, so I was really excited. I can remember I was working there when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, which, for any of you guys that don't remember, Grand Theft Auto 3 kind of really changed gaming. That was kind of with the PS2 to where that one game kind of became mainstream, but not for kids. But because video games had been toys for so long, I mean, most of the time in the 80s, video games were sold in the toy department, right next to the G.I. Joes and the He-Man and the Barbie. They didn't really have their own departments until much later. But I remember somebody, you'd have a mom come in and, she'd be distracted and whatever. She's just stopping by to pick up this stupid video game toy thing for her kid. And she'd be like, oh, yeah, my son wants for PlayStation 2, Grand Car something. I'd be like, Gran Turismo? She's like, no. I knew it. She knew it. That's not what she was talking about. And I'm like, Grand Theft Auto 3. She's like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I wanted to make the sale. My bosses wanted me to make the sale. But I always had kind of a weird guilt thing on, because the games had the rating system on them, but nobody paid attention to them. And so I'd be like, oh, is this for your son or daughter? Oh, yeah, it's for my son. I'd be like, cool. I'd be like, just out of curiosity, how old is he? And I don't know how many times this happened. They'd be like, oh, he's 8 or 6 or 7, whatever. You're like, some young age that really shouldn't be playing the game. And I think nowadays nobody cares anymore. But and I really couldn't, because it was my job, be like, oh, you can't buy this game. You're a bad mother. And probably a bad person. Don't look me in the eye. You scare me and frighten me. But obviously I was going to say that. She was a fine person. I'm sure she was a great mother. So what I would do in a real passive-aggressive kind of way, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Hey, let him know that if he wants to, if he's low on life, if he gets a hooker and sleeps with her life will go up. And then when she gets out of the car, he can murder her and take his money back. So yeah, let him know. That's a little tip and trick from your buddy Modii down at the Circuit City, the CC as we call it. Yeah, nobody called it that. I didn't call it that. I've never called it that. No one has ever, will ever call it that. And they'd be like, oh. And I would just be totally upbeat about it. Yeah, just kill that hooker. And they would be like, I'm just going to get Mario. So, yeah, there was a couple of times I lost some sales for Circuit City. I wonder if that's why they went out of business. If I would have just sold 8 more copies of Grand Theft Auto 3, they may be an electronics powerhouse. I want to say sorry to all the Circuit City stockholders. My bad. Thanks for the GameCube and Xbox. But yeah, so I worked there for 2 years, and I liked it, but it wasn't an actual video game store. Like, at the time you had EB, GameStop, Game Crazy, Babbage's, Software Etc., Funco Land. You had all of these, EB, Electronics Boutique, same thing. All of these different places where it was just about video games, and I was working in like the weird odd stepchild world of video games, where it's like, yeah, I sell video games and cordless phones. But yeah, I was really excited about that. So, man, we're almost doing this video. The one last thing I do remember, it's a weird little somber note to go on. Circuit City is actually where I worked when 9/11 happened. And, not going to go too much into that, but I remember, so when I think of 9/11, I actually think of Circuit City, because I had watched it go. I live in Arizona, so we're at the time, we would have been in Pacific time. So we were 3 hours behind New York. So by the time I got out of bed, it was already on the news and stuff like that. And I just remember going to work and we had a break room that had a TV in it. So they had the news on. And even though our managers were like, oh, you guys got to get back on the floor, they didn't really make anybody. And we, somebody would be out, then we would kind of switch each department, like somebody come in and go out. We were just watching this stuff. And I just remember that it was a weekday, it was really quiet, but it was very somber. Like, it was even slower than normal. But you could tell the guy who didn't watch TV or listen to radio in the morning, because we're all walking around like, oh my God, what's happening? And just one guy just, I need to replace this battery for this phone. And you'd be like, shh, there's things going on. But yeah, so I really remember this almost like ghost town kind of feeling in the store, because there weren't barely any customers, and most of the employees were in the back watching the TV. They wouldn't let us, understandably, they wouldn't let us put it on the TVs on the floor. But we had it in the back, so pretty much 90% of the staff, I think a couple of the managers just did laps to make sure nobody was stealing anything, and then would go swap out with other managers. So yeah, that's a big memory I have about working in Circuit City, because I worked there from, I want to say, like early December of 2000 until very early 2002. So yeah, that would have been probably Marchish, February or March. So, and that's when I moved on to the next job, which will be in the next video. So, all right, guys. Well, there's a little bit of my memories from Circuit City, and they're generally good memories, but they're also like 20-year-old memories. So it's kind of like an X. You know, you're like, oh, they weren't so bad. They were that bad. They were worse. You're forgetting things. You're traumatized. You blocked them in. So it's that kind of thing. But generally, looking back, because I know I never have to go there. Nobody does. Too soon? It was my first taste of selling video games and my first kind of interaction in the business world of video games. And I really, really enjoyed it, at least from what I can remember. So, all right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap things up there. Next episode, we're going to be a little sneak peek. We're going to be moving on to the next job I had, which is a place called Game Crazy. That was probably one of the biggest chunks of what I did in the video game world. So, but once again, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope my rants didn't go too far off in weird directions. There's probably about 9 different stories I started and didn't finish, and I apologize. But yeah, anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys so much for supporting the Pinky the Beard channel. We love doing this, and you guys seem to be digging it. And then also go check out the Patreon. Lots of cool things you can get by doing that, and also help support the channel. The Pinky the Beard Patreon is what we use to buy better equipment to make better videos. So go check that out. And yeah, it's a little bit longer of an episode than I had planned, but I probably could have told 1,000 more stories, so we'll see. Maybe the next one will be another Circuit City video. We'll have to wait and see. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.